This will be another part in my series on black baseball players during the Negro League era. Check out my other videos on Satchel Paige and Cool Papa Bell. Black baseball players during this era of the sport were some of the best players to ever play the game, regardless of race. And their stories should be remembered alongside their white counterparts as peers rather than players in segregated leagues. In a 43-year baseball career, Oscar Charleston played or managed for at least a dozen teams. He was part of the golden era of Negro League baseball and played with most of the Negro League greats. Unfortunately, he was a great player that missed out on playing in the major leagues. This fact did not preclude him from building a Hall of Fame career. The 5'8" Charleston was born on October 14, 1896 in Indianapolis, Indiana. As a kid, Charleston was a bat boy for the Indianapolis ABCs, which frankly is one of the best team names in any sport. At the age of 15, before his baseball career started, he lied about his age to join the U.S. Army. At this point, he was sent to the Philippines where he honed his athletic abilities, running track and playing baseball with his fellow soldiers. The Negro Leagues were booming by the time Oscar decided to try out. Despite the segregation and the infamous gentleman's agreement from MLB owners, black players were not allowed to play in the major leagues. Negro League baseball featured some of the best in the world. Charleston became one of those players regardless of the league he played in. As a player, he played for 13 teams. Most ball players, regardless of race, would jump from team to team frequently. This was long before organized free agency and long-term contracts. After his honorable discharge from the U.S. Army, Oscar joined his hometown ABCs in 1915 for a $50 a month salary. As a pitcher, his first start produced a 3-hit 7-0 shutout against a semi-professional team of white players. Later in the season, he moved on from pitcher while with the ABCs and began patrolling center field. Oscar was known for playing very shallow behind the second baseman and was adept at making incredible catches in the outfield due to his speed. He was fast and he could hit. It was during this time he acquired his nickname of the Hoosier Comet. Along with his hitting and fielding prowess, Charleston also played with a fiery temper and was easily provoked. This came to fruition during his first season in 1915. A dispute over balls and strikes broke out at home plate. Oscar charged in from center field and punched the umpire in the face, knocking him to the ground. The game was played against a white team, and a newspaper remarked that there was a near race riot. Oscar and another ABC's player, Elwood DeMoss, left the stadium quickly but were arrested. They both posted bail and left town. Charleston ended up playing in Cuba that winter. The ABCs were in a pinch and temporarily suspended him by loaning him to the Lincoln Giants to wait for the heat to die down. Another example of his fiery playing style and temper was on display during one of his stints playing Cuban baseball. While in Havana, Oscar fought several Cuban soldiers during a game. No major discipline, however, came from this incident. Cool Papa Bell stated that Charleston once ripped the hood off a KKK member while they were playing in Florida in the 1930s. Despite his shortness and temper, Charleston blossomed into one of the best players in all of baseball. Organized black baseball had not happened until the formation of the Negro National League in 1920, and there was not an official Negro League World Series until 1924. During these pre-1920 years, several tournaments were held to crown the best black teams. The ABCs took one of those titles in 1916, and Charleston was a major part of that squad. When World War I broke out, Oscar decided to once again enlist in the U.S. Army. He attended the Colored Officer Training Program. Thankfully, his enlistment only lasted 2 months as the armistice ended the war in 1918. After the war and 2 seasons with the ABCs and the newly established Negro National League, he was signed by the St. Louis Giants, where he was paid $400 a month, the league's highest salary. The 1921 season was his best in his career. He had 15 home runs, 12 triples, 17 doubles, and had 31 stolen bases. But even remarkably, he hit .434, all in only 60 games. The Giants folded at the end of the 1921 season, and he returned to the ABCs for the next few years before jumping to the Harrison Giants to become a player manager. The Giants folded at the end of the 1921 season, and he returned to the ABCs for the next few years before jumping to the Harrisburg Giants to become a player manager. Harrisburg folded in 1927. Many of these semi-professional Negro League teams, as well as white semi-professional teams, did not last long. After 1927, he jumped to several different teams, but he would always still go back to Cuba to play every winter. In the 9 seasons he played in the Cuban leagues, he hit .361. As stated before, many black players would play south of the border in the winter, including Satchel Paige. Speaking of Satchel, Oscar Charleston was a player-manager for the 1932 to 1936 Pittsburgh Crawfords. The Crawfords were one of the best teams in all of baseball in the 30s and included Hall of Famers such as Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, and Judy Johnson. The 32 Crawfords went 99-36, and Charleston hit .363 that year. Cool Papa Bell, another great Negro League baseball player, would join the Crawfords in 1933. With the revival of the Negro National League in 1933, the Crawfords went on to dominate black baseball, as Charleston helped them capture the Negro National League pennant. After the dissolution of the Pittsburgh Crawfords, Charleston bounced around several semi-pro leagues. His later career involved scouting, managing, and even a little bit of umpire work. Sadly, he passed away on October 5, 1954. His legacy, however, lives on. He was usually in the same breath as his white contemporaries, such as Tris Speaker, Ty Cobb, and Babe Ruth, when discussing the greatest players of this era. Additionally, he ranked in the top 5 all-time of home runs, batting average, and stolen bases for black baseball players in the Negro Leagues. Renowned baseball writer Bill James has stated that Charleston was the 4th best player of all time, behind Ruth, Honus Wagner, and Willie Mays. Historians even consider him the greatest Negro League player of all time. Some go as far as to say he was quite possibly the greatest baseball player of all time. Grantland Rice, one of the best sports journalists of all time, stated, quote, "It's impossible for anybody to be a better ball player than Oscar Charleston." He wrote this in his article, No Greater Ball Player. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1976 and finished his career with a .365 average, 1,210 hits, 143 home runs, 853 RBIs, and 210 stolen bases. As a manager, he won 420 games. His impact on baseball as a whole is unmatched. Thank you again for checking out this video from Everything Has History. If you're interested in other baseball stories, check out my other videos on Cool Papa Bell, Satchel Paige, Brooks Robinson, and Vida Blue. Please like, share, and subscribe this video, and I will see you on the next Everything Has History.